Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Crusty Canuck here, episode 3 of VIDS on the Fly, the Crusty Canuck podcast. Not the usual format that I usually like to follow when it comes to making the podcast for you all out there, but because of certain time constraints this evening, I cannot fully make a proper podcast. So my YouTube subscribers and fans out there, and my friends on Facebook, please enjoy. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe. Share this content over your social media platforms and help us Canucks get our words out there. So based on the last podcast I did, episode 315, Heroes and Zeros, basically, it was a reflection on my time in the military and how Remembrance Day is so important. And now I'm seeing footage from certain parades in Calgary and Toronto and some in Ottawa, excuse me, in regards to disenfranchising a lot of people that committed the ultimate sacrifice in our country. Now, regardless of how trendy it is right now to say that North America is Turtle Island and to say that Canada is nothing but colonialism and the United States nothing but colonialism and Mexico is nothing but colonialism, look what has been created in the name of democracy and fairness all around. Now, you can sit here and debate with me till you're blue in the face and tell me about the racial past that has happened, and I can probably agree with you. There have been some racial BS and some equal uncertainties that have happened in our past, ladies and gentlemen. But regardless of how you feel right now in regards to how you like Canada, how you don't like Canada, how you like the United States, how you don't like the United States, how you like Mexico and don't like Mexico, how you like the Western world as a whole. A lot of benefits have come from certain programs when it comes to promoting equality and fairness. A lot of goodness has come out of certain social programs to help people along their way. And all those programs are not brought to you by said governments. They are brought to you by tax dollars from people who work every day, regardless of color, creed, gender, or identity. Now, Sir Robert Borden High School in Ottawa, apparently there was a teacher there that played something Arabic during the Remembrance Day ceremony. I kind of find that insulting. Not because of someone speaking a different language than English or French, because someone bringing in their own political belief into a ceremony where there's no need for politics whatsoever. Jody Gondek out of Calgary, more or less calling Canadian citizens settlers. In Toronto, David Menzies, a reporter for Rebel Media, being arrested for confronting some individuals that are waving Palestinian flags. And yet when you watch the videos on Rebel Media, you're not seeing him promote any kind of violence or any kind of division. He's asking direct questions and he's showing passion because he's had family members in his life sacrifice time and effort, and some their life, in the name of peace, security, and freedom. Now, we can sit here all day and talk about the pros and cons of war and the terrible this, terrible that. And I've heard lots of people since I started my podcast talk about how their grandparents did this. Great. My grandparents served too. I had a grandfather that served in Holland. I had a grandfather that served the Royal Canadian Air Force. I also have a distant uncle that spent some time in Korea. Not to mention some of the Canadians I have met over the past 5 years. You know, Canadians that are over the age of 70, who signed up with the American services during the Vietnam War. Yours truly, of course, you've heard me say this before, I spent time in Afghanistan. So I know what it's like, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to the ultimate sacrifice. Now, I'm still here today because I didn't have to commit the ultimate sacrifice, but I was willing to. And I've served with family and friends that are willing to do the exact same thing. Some of those lads aren't with us today. But I'm also a believer in free speech. So you see a dilemma here too. Now, those individuals that have called us settlers and promoted other dirty wars that have nothing to do with this country whatsoever, or have anything to do with anything in the Western free world, all I can say is give your head a shake and shame on fucking you. Okay? Especially the elected officials out there that want to become activists rather than politicians. Especially the elected officials out there who don't give a real rat's ass about your constituents, which you're worried about your pensions and your perks. Right? See, in this video, and if you are privy to see this, to any MLA, to any MP or MPP, or any member of the council of the city of Calgary, city of Toronto, city of Ottawa, or any major city in this country that has turned a blind eye to these ridiculous protests, I open up the floor to you. Like the old saying, come at me, bro. I challenge you to an actual online debate. Well, I'll set up the streamline that I have, the StreamYard that I use for my podcast, and you're more than welcome to engage me in a good conversation in regards to equality, fairness, inclusion, and all these other buzzwords here. And I'll talk to you about sacrifice, and I'll talk to you about what it takes to give 100% outside of the so-called bubble and comfort zone that a lot of you leaders like to dwell in. If you're up for it, that is. Now, I expect maybe some response to you individuals within a week of this video coming out, if you have the guts to see it, or if someone wants to pass it up to your way. I want to see what kind of mettle you really have when you want to engage with an old crusty Canuck like myself when it comes to a debate on things about equality and fairness. There's always going to be haves and have-nots, regardless. There's always going to be people who might have a little less than others. But people who tend to have a little less in life tend to be a little more, nice and realistic. Okay? Now, after Remembrance Day, I'm seeing all this crap, as I mentioned. And I'll leave links in my description for you, ladies and gentlemen, about how these leaders and little groups and little interest groups like to thrive. All I can say to you about this is, do you usually like to shit where you eat? You like to bite the hand that feeds you? You have every right to protest. Everyone, as far as I'm concerned, from coast to coast to coast, a Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian. We all heard the same old regurgitated crap coming from our leadership. Okay? But what are you fighting for? You're actually fighting for a noble cause? Get on a plane and go over there and fight, why don't you? Why do you come to Canada to have a good life? Just to sit and try to disrupt and try to harm and disenfranchise people who have built things in this country. You don't like the statues that represent our colonial past? Then don't pay attention to them. You don't like what happened in the 1940s and the 1960s? Hell, in the 1980s? Learn from it. Has Canada been perfect? No. Has America been perfect? No. Has Mexico? Has Britain? Has France? Has Germany? Has every other working democracy out there been perfect? No. Are you perfect? No. Am I perfect? Fuck no. But you want to sit there and roll around in the streets with your masks on, trying to show nobility in a good fight by destroying the very fabric that protects your sorry ass. Think about that. You talk about strength and independence. You talk about fairness and equality. Yet what kind of fairness are you promoting? What kind of equality are you promoting? I don't see you promoting fairness and equality. I see you promoting darkness. I'm not a religious man, but one could say you're promoting evil too. Let this be a warning to some individuals out there as well. There are a lot of Canadians, such as myself, who have different skin tones than I do, that come from the land, that come from a heritage of certain groups, that come from here and come from there, who've come from far away, who have built a great life in this country, who have raised good families. And some of those kids that come from those good families are people that I personally worked for. There are people that I've served with, the people that I've gone to bat for, people that I've answered orders to and given orders to. All colors, all creeds. And I can tell you this right now, they've had enough of this shit too. Some of them might be from India. Some of them are from Italy. Some are from Greece. Some are from Jamaica. Some are from Somalia. And I've had the honor of serving with a lot of individuals from above mentioned. And they're sick of the garbage as well. So this past Remembrance Day, I've reflected, and I'm going to keep reflecting every Remembrance Day, because that's my church. That's my homage. That's where I would sit and beat myself up and have a little bit of guilt and a bit of shame in things. But I'm not responsible for what's going on in Palestine. I'm not responsible for what's happening in Israel. I'm not responsible for what happened 100 years ago or 200 years ago. I'm not responsible for what happened in the 1960s, nor the 70s, nor any decade. Because I grew up in a household where I was taught you don't judge people based on the color or their sexuality. You judge people on their actions and or their lack of them. So far, it's kept me alive. Not as sane as I should be because of my experiences, or as what some of you kids would say, lived experience. But I am going to say this. Smarten up! Get a goddamn grip of yourself. Because as I mentioned earlier, there's some individuals I have spoken to that come from different cultures, different backgrounds, who are raised in different households, and they make the sound decision to live in a country and promote the peace and freedom and security that Canada and the United States and Mexico and the Western world has offered and showed proudly to everybody from all over the globe. So you can sit there and tell me about the plight that happened in this decade or that decade. And half of you fuckers weren't even alive when that shit happened. So what the hell do you know about it? Hey? Who are you to tell me what to think and what to say and who I should obey? You little pukes. Hey? And to some of you politicians that go along with this garbage, that go along with this status quo mentality. What the fuck do you know? Huh? Because all you lot are worried about your pay and your perks and what's given to you by the taxpayer. Yet the taxpayer is losing. So we're going to start fighting back. Don't say we didn't warn you. You're not going to see it's coming. I'm not saying it's going to be violent, but I'm not saying it's going to be polite either. Something for you all to think about out there. Why can't we appreciate this land? Why can't we appreciate all persons? It doesn't matter if they're black or white or First Nations or Indigenous, if they identify. Right? I'm not going to enforce my will on you. You do what's good for you. But if what's good for you means destroying monuments, destroying history, and destroying a way of life, then you're going to get resistance. And that resistance is going to come down hard, regardless if it's supported by the police, regardless if it's supported by the authorities. And it's not going to matter. The last thing I want to see is riots in the streets and violence galore. But you're seeing a dynamic here where it's not okay to protest against your government when it comes to mandates and certain inoculations or certain this and certain that, but it's okay to be in the streets and harass people and condemn one religion over another, condemn one culture over another culture. And it doesn't matter if you're from the same country or not. We're seeing the double standard. Get rid of the double standards. Start taking responsibility and start stepping up. That's all I'm going to say on that right now, ladies and gentlemen. This has been Vids on the Fly, episode 3. And I hope you've enjoyed what you've seen. And please comment, like, subscribe, all that stuff. Please consider donating too if you can. I'll leave links in the description for you. Every little bit helps, ladies and gentlemen. Give what you can. But don't forget to help out a fellow Canuck out there trying to make ends meet. Have a good day. Have a good evening. And I shall be around sometime soon this week with a proper podcast. And like I always say, humanity and merit wins the day. Take care. and I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.